Hi, and welcome to What's Important to You with me, James Dean. On the show, I will be talking to people from all walks of life and asking them the question, what's important to you? Because I believe once we understand what's important, then we can build the life that we truly want to live. I hope you are inspired by the guests that I talk to and answer that question for yourself and build the life that you truly want. You can support the show by clicking on the subscribe button, sharing your favorite episode, or leaving your comments. Thanks for watching. Today's guest is an accredited team and group coach with the European Coaching and Mentoring Council. She specialises working with teams within organisations and businesses. She founded the OnLegs Agency in 2019 and offers various services with her panel of coaches and mentors. She is well known and respected in the fields of coaching and mentoring and taps into over 2 decades of experience developing leadership teams, driving strategy, and delivering on projects across the UK and Ireland to give her insight so she can work with a diverse group of clients across various sectors. She is often described as a high-energy, engaging coach who helps clients see through a different lens. She lives in County Down in the middle of the Mourne Mountains and enjoys hiking and powerlifting. She also holds Ireland's unofficial record for the highest handstand in Ireland. Today, we find out what's important to Kate Rooney. Hi, Kate. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're very, very welcome, and thanks for having me, James.
Yeah, really looking forward to chatting to you. So we're going to dive straight in, Kate, with the first question as always, which is, Kate, what's important to you?
I've thought about this question, James, knowing that I was coming on, and it's actually more difficult than it seems. You know, you think it's an innate, instant thing, but it's not, because there's 100 things. But I think whenever you look at what's important to you, for me, what I did was look at the themes, because there was lots of things that were important to me. But when you tied them all together, you know, to try to give them some sort of anchor, it's freedom. It absolutely comes down to freedom. Freedom to be myself, freedom to do what I want, freedom that somebody hasn't got my wings, you know, clipped. So freedom is absolutely, I think, the most important thing to me, and certainly my guide. You know, that's what I'm kind of constantly looking for. Freedom.
I love it. Love that word. It is a few people have shared that word before. It's a really powerful one. So I like it because you said there's 2 different things in the sense of it seems to go, as you say, a theme across the board. So it's in relation to, I suppose, is it something that you think about when anything you're doing, whether it's like personal life, career, you know, how does it, I suppose, how did that word come about, I suppose, is the question I'm asking.
I suppose when I look at my life, I am 45, 46 going on this year, and I didn't have children. And I didn't have children as a choice. And when I think about why I made that choice, I didn't want to be held down. I like to be able to get up, put my backpack on, and head up the mountains, for talk's sake. If an opportunity comes up, I want to be able to take that opportunity and not have to think about what do I need to get, you know, sorted. So I think at a very, very fundamental stage, I made a decision very early on that I didn't want children. Now, I did not connect that to freedom at the time.
Right.
But, you know, when you reflect, I've made a lot of decisions in my life, James. And when I start thinking about what those decisions have in common, it seems to come down to freedom. Some might say fear of being tied down, but definitely freedom. I'm not married. I'm with my partner 25 years. I have no intention of ever marrying him. Do you know? So there's definitely a pretty strong piece there that I like the idea of being able to get up and go.
I love it.
If the opportunity arises.
And but I think it's interesting, even you just kind of touched on it there in a sense of like the idea of almost like perspective, because they say the one lens could be in a sense of, oh, it's the fear of you know, settling down, or the fear of you know, something like this, but the other perspective is actually no, it's the freedom. So it very much depends on how one wants to look at something. And as you say though, but and I suppose the perspective that you're sharing there is one that the ability to be able to do whatever you want is at a drop of a hat, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And identity is really important to me as well. Brand and who I am. And I think, you know, I never wanted to be identified as a mother or a wife, or, you know, that identity and that freedom of identity. So certainly I've given this a bit of thought, knowing I was coming on to you
Yeah.
today, and that freedom
Yeah.
kind of permeates right throughout my life and shows
Yeah.
up in lots. I'm working for myself, freedom, do you know, so it
Yeah.
shows up in nearly everything I do, and not in a forced, contrived way, just in a life choice, and that's the way it is,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
way. But certainly that freedom definitely is a thread right throughout most of
True.
what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting because it's also, as you say, that perspective of what you just shared, the sense of whatever it is, whether it's your, even with the word that you said about identity, because it's such a um powerful word. And you said it, one of the first things you said when you came on, about the freedom to be yourself. And that sort of ties
Mm-hmm.
into identity. And it's one of those, for varying and multiple different reasons at the moment, identity is very much something that's in the sort of the common discourse at the moment, that whole term of identity. But you know, the fact that you said, he says your identity in sense of your, what you do, your name, you know, it's a really, so when you say about identity, does that inform who you are, or is it kind of a circular thing?
It's, to me, identity is extremely important, you know, and I
Yeah.
think you use the word authenticity, and it's become
Mm,
me now at this stage, you know, and it's lost, you know, I think the quality that it had and the power that it had, because it's so overused. And I think now when we talk about identity and personal brand, we do see a glaze coming over people's eyes, because it's, here we go again. But
yes.
it's not about that. It's about what is absolutely innate. And for me, the freedom to be myself
Mm,
is really, really important. The freedom to not be in a workplace where I have to deliver a narrative that is not mine. You know,
yeah.
the freedom to be able to be who I am, say what I want to say, and not be answerable to anybody around that, is really, really important. And I think that's what identity is. Identity is not about showing up in an authentic way. Identity is about showing up, full stop,
Yeah.
and not ever really having to think about it, because you're showing up as you are and not trying to be authentic. You
Yes.
shouldn't have to try to be authentic.
Yeah.
I think freedom allows that. Freedom allows not to have to consider being authentic. Freedom is, I'm here, I'm in front of you, and this is me.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Yeah.
thinking about what that is.
Yeah, exactly. It's that almost instinct type of being, you know, that essentially they're
Absolutely.
coming to that being.
Absolutely.
And as you say, not having to prepare yourself, almost like, you know, because I've done it in sense of, I when I reflect back, when you say that, when I've done it in previous jobs and stuff, it's almost like that thing of like going through the doorway is like, right now I have to be X person today in order to get through whatever I need to get through, and turn up as this alternative self. And that can be quote unquote successful, or can get you so much,
Absolutely. It can be
but
necessary.
then
Yeah.
but at some points there's still a bit of a conflict. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
my next question, I suppose, is this something that you kind of always had, or is it something that you kind of gravitated and found over the years, that sort of concept of freedom?
It's it's an interesting story, James. So my dad, I grew up as a fortune teller's daughter. So my identity at a very early age was the fortune teller's daughter. And I was never called Kate. I was always referred to as the fortune teller's daughter. And we lived in a blue collar workforce. Everyone was joiners, you know, bricklayers. And I had a dad who was a fortune teller in a small minded Northern Irish town. So you can imagine, you know, the
Yeah.
difficulty that that would have brought. So at a very early age, I had a very strong sense of identity, but lack of identity,
Mm,
because my identity was the fortune teller's daughter, not Kate Rooney, whom I was. And even like about 2 years ago, I went back to that town, James, and I went to a chip van. And as I was walking away from the chip van, I overheard the girl saying to the other girl, "Do you know who that is?" And she said, "Who?" She went, "That's the fortune teller's daughter." Now, I'm 45 years old and my
yeah.
dad's passed away 20 years, and that identity was
Gosh.
so, so strong. So, with regards to your question, it was something I was at a very early age had started thinking about. So, I was thinking about
Mm,
brand, didn't know the word was called brand or personal
yes.
brand, didn't have those that language. but I was very aware of it at a very, very young age, which made me question, who am I?
Yeah.
And that need or desire to not be the fortune teller's daughter, but to be Kate in my own right, if that
Yes.
makes sense. So yeah, I
100%.
suppose it was very innate, and it was a very, very early, introduction to thinking about who you are, because we usually don't
Yeah.
ask the question, who am I,
Yeah.
until we're old, if ever. But I was asking, who am I, at a very early age.
Yeah, absolutely. And God, the way you say it, almost sounds like it should be the name of a novel, in the sense of the fortune teller's daughter or something, doesn't it?
Yes,
But it's,
it has a
but
ring
it,
to
but
it,
it,
yes.
yeah, but isn't that it? That sort of, so essentially through, because of that experience, there's that whole idea of self-awareness, very much, as you say,
Absolutely.
had from a young age. And so I suppose in some ways, the, I can kind of resonate a little bit in some ways, in a sense that from my background initially, just to share, and people would have heard this before, in a sense of like where I grew up. So I actually grew up, I was born in Germany. My father worked as, he was a civil servant, but he worked for the British Ministry of Defense. So I grew up on a military base in the
Yes.
northwest of Germany. So I grew up there till I was, went to university. So I was 18, 20, it was like, as I lived, that was my home essentially.
Answers, yeah.
And and then obviously my name being James Dean, so I was like, oh, this James Dean from Germany. So you had these, you know what I mean? So you have these sort of like tags and stuff, and
Yes,
sort of that through no fault of your own are just bestowed upon you type thing.
absolutely.
So
Yes.
you're trying to kind of go, in some ways, right, we'll figure out, well, where the whole thing again, coming back to identity, well, whether, it's one of those things in a sense where it's like, well, I'm not German, but I've never lived in England. I've now been in Ireland nearly 20 years, so all these sort of like, is it, to me, it's like, well, is that important? Is it not important? Is it so it kind of makes you think of the much more deeper things of
Absolutely.
than that more sort of surface stuff, from
Yes.
my
Yes.
experience anyway. Did you find that you were kind of like, well, actually, you know what, if I want to actually be known as Kate, well, I have to know what Kate
Who Kate is.
actually is. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and again, yeah, go
Sorry.
on.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I resonate with that, hugely. And your story's interesting as well. And everyone had, like, whenever I do a talk called The Fortune Teller's Daughter, and there is a book in it, James, because it's such a good
Yeah,
title.
yeah,
You're full not to go near it. But everyone's got a fortune teller's daughter story, because people will say, "Oh my God, Kate, your story," and you're going, but you might have been the only Irish speaking person in the town. You might have owned the post office in the town. You might have lived
yeah,
in a military base.
yeah,
Everyone has a fortune teller's
yeah,
daughter story. But what you do with that story in generating your own identity is what a lot of people don't do. A lot of
yes,
people, A, didn't recognize their story,
yes,
to help, identify who they are. So yeah, there's it's what you do with what you have, and
yeah,
the tags you were given. That's the trick, as opposed to the tag itself, because we've all got a tag.
yeah,
Some
yeah,
are a wee bit more, fortune tellers' daughters, a wee bit more out there, but we've
yeah,
all got one.
yeah. So
We're
so
all
when
given
you,
an identity.
yeah, exactly. So then, well, what was then, you said it was such a young age that you kind of decided, well, actually, I want to be more known of who I am. So what was the, tell me a bit more in a sense of how it got to the point from, you can take it as long as short as you want, to get from that sort of young age of having that awareness to sort of where you are now. What was the sort of process in that?
I suppose I fought against the fortune teller's daughter, hugely, because people would have walked to the other side of the street, James, when I was walking down, thinking that if I touched them, I'd put a spell on them.
Oh
Or, they'd
gosh.
come up and they'd put their hand out in front of me and ask me, what the lottery numbers were, and, silly stuff like that. So I fought against it, because I thought, I don't like this, because this isn't good for me socially. And
Mm,
this has been forced upon me. And my dad was a really, really strong character. Like, we had a crystal ball and tarot cards on our kitchen table. And when I
yes.
brought friends around, they sat on the kitchen table. They were never allowed to be removed. So I was getting taught lessons about identity at a very early age. I remember saying, "Dad, I've got Mary coming round after school. Can we get rid of the crystal ball and the tarot cards? Because she's going to think we're weird." And he said, "But that's who we are, Kate, and they will not be removed." Now, he was saying that's our brand, that's our identity, but again, the narrative wasn't there, the vocabulary wasn't there. So at some level, as much as I was fighting against it, I was also getting a sense of, who you are is who you are, and do not be ashamed of it, even though I was hugely ashamed at the
Yes.
time, but it was still instilling lessons that I would then pick up on
Yes.
at a later age when I started to kind of, become less concerned about what the people around the park were saying. The other thing with Dad was he was a phenomenal, whether you believe in fortune telling or not, that's irrelevant, and my opinion on that is irrelevant. But what he could do was read a room like nobody else.
Mm.
And he could spot you a mile off and had your fortune told before you ever sat down. The crystal ball and the cards were merely a bit of, glam. But he was a brilliant body expert. He could read body language. He could sense energy. And living in a house like that, we had 7 clients a day, James, 7 days a week. This was not the odd person rocking up to the house. This was,
Yeah.
a cash business, money hid. It was a big cash business, and it was big business at the time. And we people all over Ireland come to us. So 7 days a week, 7 clients on average a day. And I would have taken appointments. That would have been my first job, meet and greet at the door. So during that, I was picking up on energy, picking up on body language, picking up on what's going on with these people, not reading their fortunes, but picking up on all of that, picking up on identity, the different clothes, the way different people would speak on the phone, the way different people would present themselves at the door, hiding, out loud and proud. So
Mm.
I was kind of picking up all this, and I was pretty intuitive as a child and as a person anyway. So as much as I thought, my gosh, this fortune teller, thing going on in our house.
Mm.
Oh my God, James, like what an education. I would not
Yeah.
give it up for the world. So when it came to me starting to think, who am I and where am I in life and what do I want in life? I had all that to tap back into without
Mm.
realizing. That all came to the forefront. And I understood at a deep level what it meant to be unique, what it meant to stand out, what it meant to be memorable. I understood at a deep level when you walked into the room how to read the room, how to sense what was going on, how to interact with people. I had learned all of that. So that made identity pretty easy for me, to be
Yeah.
fair. It was never something I struggled with. When I moved out of the fortune teller's daughter identity and moved into the Quieten or the OnLegs Agency, I did it with ease
Yeah.
because I was pretty, clear who I was and who I was not. And I think
Yes.
that's important. Who am I not? Let's not try to please the people. And I didn't please
Yes.
people growing up because I couldn't. Therefore, I never got used to people pleasing.
Yes.
So there was a bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the so much in that. And thank you for sharing. But I think like one of the biggest sort of lessons that I was listening to that as well, though, from what you were sharing about your dad, and I'm sure it's one of the things you've taken on for yourself now, is that thing of like, as much as I can imagine as a teenager, sort of railing against it in sense of that sort of, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Please, well, swallow me up in a sense of what
Yeah.
is this type stuff, but that not sort of that level of no, but this is who I am and I don't care what the other person thinks, essentially, because look at all these people who I am helping or I am serving, and or whatever you want to call it, whether your opinion you say on the thing that he's doing, but it's that absolute belief in a sense of who he was. So
Yes.
when you come to, you say, you step into whatever it is you are, what you doing and who you are, that you have that within you, they're going, if you don't care or don't like this, that's nothing to do with me. That's one of
Yeah.
the biggest things that I see, and I'm sure you say yourself, in a sense of the worry of what other people will think and say is probably one of the
Absolutely.
biggest hang-ups that keeps people from doing what they really want to do.
Yeah, it cripples people, and it
Yeah.
holds so much potential, and we don't see the full capability of the person because the fear is there of what other people will think. And
Yeah.
I think through what I went through at an early age, being really ridiculed, I kind of got over that. You know,
Mm.
I'd
Yeah.
had the worst experience as a teenager, walking down the street that that didn't really impact me too much. I'm still here at 18 and I'm okay. So
Yeah.
therefore, what people think about me going into my stage in my life is never going to be as difficult as that was. So
Yeah.
therefore, it's not even worth thinking about.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yes. Because it's that thing of like, because I think even for myself, again, it's like, because you say you've probably had different so you've been working through on your own business, different changes, and sort of, oh, I want to change this, or I change the name and stuff. And sometimes if myself think, oh, what if I change it now, what will people think? Because I was so committed to this one thing, and then I'm
Yeah,
changing it. So you think
yeah,
even that thing of like the idea of not even stepping into yourself, but completely changing, do a
yeah.
complete reversal, going from this sort of persona or occupation, whatever it is, to the complete opposite, and wondering, "Oh, what people are going to think." So even from maybe not yourself, but from people you work with, you have any examples of like how you kind of like really go with that change or completely flipping it?
Yeah, so I do a lot of work around personal brand with clients. So that's one of the areas that I work with one-to-one clients on. And I do like
Yeah.
a five session program on personal brand. And that is at a very deep level. It's not about, do you wear blue? Do you wear pink? Do you know what's your,
Yeah.
it's not about that. That has to come up because it's part of it if you're in business. But we
Yeah.
really tap into who you are, who you want to be, how others see you, how that makes you feel. And I spend a lot of time with clients in that space to try to shift them from it's your lens that matters. Your
Mm.
lens matters. The perception of other people is going to be important if you're in business, but you control what that is.
Yeah.
So if I want you to think, gosh, Kate's really soft and demure and sweet, well, that's very easy. I can make you think that in 10 seconds because I will
Yeah.
show up that way. And if
Yeah.
I want you to think, God, she is completely high energy, crazy off the charts, well, again, very, very easy. So I tap into the fortune teller's daughter a lot in my work. I'll say, listen, do you think how people perceive you is within your control or not? Do you have the power to control
Yeah.
people's minds? And people go, no. I say, well, you do.
Yeah.
You do, but make them see you for who you are rather
Mm.
than who you think they want to see.
Yeah.
That's where your power lies, and what you do with that. So I really, really do a lot of work with clients to try to get them back to who they are. Like there's a fantastic quote, I think I might have it at the back. I do. Can you remember who you were before the world told you who you should be?
Yeah.
Can you tap into that young girl or that young boy? Who were they? Who are they without the fear of
Mm.
this is what I should be? So I do a lot of work in that space to get us to that space. And then we do the very practical, how you show up, how you present.
Yeah.
That is only that you cannot, too many people are doing that
Yes.
without doing the bit at the front. And then what happens is people go to another coach and become another version of themselves and they're still not happy. So I work with who you are at your absolute core before we
Yeah.
even consider how you would walk into the room,
Yeah.
because that's secondary.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, my sort of add on to that, I'd love to know if you, from your experiences, because I think even myself, when I go through sort of my own sort of process, my internally, but then people that I've worked with, is they come in with one potential idea or perspective of what they're going to do, and they realize through the process, actually they may have the heart set on something. Oh, this is the way it's gonna, I want to do this, I want to be this, I want to do. But when you peel it back, it's like there's so many other options. You can still be who you are, but in a different way. It's like, what, as opposed to, sometimes we can get fixated on the outcome thing of, oh no, I have to do it this way, or I have to be this. It's like, well, actually, if you go back to that core level of who the person is, it opens up a lot more options of what they might do with that, in a sense of whether it be as a person or in a career, etc. So it's as opposed to, we can get so fixated on the one thing that we again lose that identity, because we're forever trying to find the way that people want us to look like versus who we are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hugely. Yeah. And if you're able to remove that or rub it out a little, you'll never really
Yeah.
always be able to remove it. But if we can soften it just to hear the real voice, and that's what
Yeah.
it's about quietening down the noise so that we can hear what's inside. I refer to it as the arrow. Do you know what is the arrow? Where's the arrow pointing? But we
Yeah.
can't put into the arrow if there's noise and voices and opinions. So let's try to, just turn the volume down in that for a while and let's see what comes up. And it might, we're not
Mm.
saying you have to do it. We're not saying that's the direction. What's coming up? Let's just pay attention to
Yes.
that for a while. So I like to sit in that space with clients on a personal level, and play. And I do say, let's play. Let's just play.
Okay.
There's no need to. We're not sticking to anything. There's no obligations. Just let's play.
Mm.
and see what comes up. And it's surprising, you know, I mean, I get surprised, and I've been doing this for years, but I constantly get surprised. And you know, you're looking at the person on the screen and you can just see the penny drop and the moment and the shoulders drop down and the, oh my God, how did I not see it? But sometimes you just need to turn the volume down and sit in a quiet, non-judgmental, fun, playful space and see what happens. You know.
And is it mainly people who are going into business that you work with there then, Kate?
Yeah, so I work with businesses. So I work with businesses, SMEs and large businesses with regards to leadership teams. So my theme again is the same. So with leadership teams, it will be, let's stop telling leaders how to lead. Let's stop, you know, training them on step-by-step guides. They've probably been to 15 training sessions at this stage. Let's tap into what they know. Let's start extracting what's in there. Let's allow them to be themselves in that leadership. So in that space, I would do a lot of team coaching with teams in that regard. And then in my personal work, it will be mostly people that are in business, lots of entrepreneurs, coaches, counselors, freelancers that are trying to establish themselves, or like you have said, have maybe changed themselves 3 or 4 times and in the sense have got lost and they need to find a way back. And get a clear direction. So it's a lovely scope of work, you know, because it's one-to-one and team, it's leadership and it's personal. There's a general theme around it will be, you know, the RO will be that, you know, that what's inside, not put in, let's extract. So regardless of who I'm working with, it's still the same, you know, same things are happening. Yeah.
No, it's interesting as well, because it's say like with the sort of in the sort of more workspace type environment, the corporate or the business space, we say, in working with teams, because I say I worked in a number of years in a corporate space in the sense of financial services. And again, for the number of years that they were there, there's, you know, almost the repetition of, oh, there's a new management course or a new thing brought in, but it's interesting in a sense of, and I hope it's more changing. I've been out of it for a few years, but that almost, the simplest way I can explain it when I was in those was almost like a paint by numbers. Oh no, this is just come in and follow these steps and everything will be fine. As you say, versus, well, the people in that room must have got to be in that room for some reason. And and let's actually give them and as opposed to, like, I don't know if this would be an interesting question for yourself, like when you're in that space and you allow every voice to be heard, the amount of actual knowledge, because sometimes people won't actually be heard. They might have the best ideas or a different perspective, but giving them the opportunity to say it out loud is very powerful.
You've absolutely nailed it, James. And I'm on a mission at the minute for exactly what you, and I mean on a mission, like I am this drum till, you know, I put my fist through this drum. That room already has knowledge. That room already has expertise. That room has ideas that nobody has heard because nobody is listening. And yet we roll in with a whiteboard and we roll out another training session and we put more information in rather than extracting the amazing information that's already in the room. So we do need to change what we're doing with teams and organizations. And we need to say, like you said, you were hired for a reason. You've maybe 3 or 4 jobs before you came to this. What did you learn? What can you offload here? We need to turn training on its head. And it's not about training as in putting stuff in. It's about pulling that out. So I refer to it as, let's not implant further ideas and more information. Spend some time with your team to extract what's there, and you will be very, very surprised. You will never probably need to do another training session unless it's a new rollout on how something specifically works. Ever again, do you know? So let's extract the information that's in the room.
Because it's, to me, that when this is my sort of perspective on something, I think it probably goes across to companies as well, or anyone. It's like, sometimes we can get caught up in thinking, well, the problem, quote unquote, that we have is so complicated and so complex. It must need a really complicated and complex solution. We kind of think there's so much of ourselves or the thing we have, and it's kind of like, so well, we have to have the most convoluted sort of training model method thing, whatever. It's like, no, it's like, if you break things down enough, it's like the simplest thing is it's there's so much simplicity there, and it's being brave enough to listen to the simple solution as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you hear people all the time in leadership teams, and I only heard it on this week, and someone said, this sounds really silly. The really silly, or this seems really simple, this seems so obvious, and you're going, oh my God, please say the obvious thing, because the obvious thing is not being said, and the obvious thing is the magic. The
Yes.
obvious thing is the bit you're going, yes, that's the bit that's going to pull this together. Say more of that. But as
Yeah.
you say, you have to have trust in the room. We have to hear all voices in the room, and a good coach will pick up from the body language, from
Mm.
what's not being said, who's not speaking, or who's
Mm.
holding back. And a good coach in a room like that is there to hear what's not being said, and
Mm.
to be able to some way get that extracted without putting people on the spot, because not
Yeah.
everyone can speak in group settings, and some people like to reflect. But a good coach should be able to pick up on all those non-verbals and kind of go, okay, we have a bit of magic happening in the room here to the
Yeah.
left, and we're
Yeah.
not hearing it. How do I extract that?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm going to say, it's part of what you're doing is trying to almost create a space where that allows that vulnerability as well from people.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as a coach, I show up vulnerable.
Yeah.
I show up not as the expert, not with all the answers. If I'm sitting with, accountants, what do I know about accountancy? I don't have an accountancy background. So I lay that out straight away. Do
Yeah.
you know, I am not the expert here. I don't use jargon, because I'm not going to know what you, and I said,
Yeah.
what does that mean? And suddenly then, I'm not the expert in the room. And when I'm
Yeah.
not the expert in the room, you don't have to impress. And when you don't
Yes.
have to impress, you can say the silly thing.
Yeah.
That's not actually so silly
Yeah.
after all,
Yeah, yeah. Because it reminded me there. I think I saw a clip from Simon Sinek, from the work that he does, and he was sharing a story where he was kind of went into again a whatever environment in a team, the leadership team that he was talking about, and someone was explaining whatever they were explaining, and he was like, "Oh, like I'm sorry for just delaying the meeting here, but it's like I really don't understand. Can you take it a little bit further back from me?" And they went a little bit, and I say further back and further back. And in the end, everyone else in all the execs were all nodding along, and they were actually, oh, I don't know what it is. Oh, I don't know what it means.
Yes, yeah,
It's like that not wanting to sort of lose face type thing of like being the sort of, he
absolutely.
called it the idiot in the room. But
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
but that allowing people to go, you know what, it sort of can decompress and go, right, now we're all at the same level. Let's
yeah.
bring it all back up.
100%. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, James. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so when you then working with the individual side of it, when you're working with those individuals, what's then the sort of process working with someone when you said a little bit about them, it's going initially, it's not necessarily the branded thing, it's about who they are first. What's then
Yeah.
the next stage of that then?
Well, I'd like you kind of alluded to it there earlier on. What people present with is usually not what we end up working with.
Yeah.
So that happens all the time. And I'll be sitting, I was saying, so what's brought you to coaching? And and I'm merely kind of going, okay, I've a strange sensation that session 3 we're not going to be talking about this, but I'll put
Yeah.
it down anyway. That's interesting, etc. And I think the process, and it may sound a bit, blasé, but it is about listening.
Yeah.
And it is, and I find Zoom actually better than in person. I think sometimes when we're in person, because I pick up a lot of non-verbals, and because I'm very intuitive, it can sometimes be too much. I'm picking up too much,
Mm.
so I find the screen kind of helps me with my skill set to kind of not be picking up as much as I normally pick up in the room. So it is kind of looking to say, oh, what is happening with the face? What's happening with, now I'm not a facial expert or anything like that,
Yep.
but my background has given me a lot of skills. And I just say, you said that, but I'm getting a sense that that wasn't comfortable to say, or you held something back. Maybe I'm wrong. And I always give permission to say, I might be wrong. If I
Yes.
pick this up wrong, let me know. And I always kind of put it into I sense, I feel. What's that?
Yeah.
So really not taking it for granted that I understand what you've said, because I'm taking that into my own lens, into my own world, and computing that. I want to know what it means in your world, in your words, from your lens. So I spend a huge amount of time making sure that I have really understood what you've said, Because if I've understood what you've said and I'm able to get into your shoes, then I can start seeing what you see.
Mm.
And I think that's really, really critical. So whenever you trust them, there's 2 or 3 things she's put back to me. She said, I've sensed she's been right. I've sensed she's right. And then when the what about comes in, you've already, you're going, this, she gets me.
Yeah.
You know, she gets me. So if she's saying this, I'm going to listen. So I find I pick up trust and rapport very quickly because of the energy that I have, you know, and people tend to buy into that quite quickly. And things like recall, I can't believe you've recalled all that, Kate, or you've remembered all of that. So I remember my minute details about something that you've said in a previous session. So I use that. The recall is very, very strong. The intuition is very strong. The body language piece is strong. Alongside the energy, you know, it's a high energy, it's a fun environment. You know, this is not a corporate vibe. I'm sure you're not getting a corporate vibe from me. That tends to move us through with tough questions, and I challenge. I'm a challenging coach. When I'm with you, I'm saying you're paying money to sit in a room virtually or face to face. You have to have value at the end of this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ensure you get value, but that means sometimes tough conversations. That means sometimes giving you a wee nudge. People say it was more than a nudge, Kate. I say it was a nudge.
Yeah.
But that's really, really important. So I call it gentle nudges. People call it maybe not so gentle. But that's really important, that you come out of the 5 sessions going, I am glad I phoned Kate.
Yeah.
You know,
But and I think that's a really important thing to note in there, actually, because I think whether for good or bad, in a sense of like the space of sort of coaching, whether it comes under the sort of umbrella of personal development, wellness and stuff, there is an element, there's some lenses in a sense that it can still be seen as a bit fluffy or a bit sort of soft and this sort of stuff. But the truth is, to change anything about oneself, whether it be to do with your own sort of values, the way you behave, your behaviors, your actions, whether it be your occupation, it's not easy. It can come across as quite a surface, the way people look from the outside. If you've never experienced it, if you've never experienced going through that real hard change, it could be simple, but doesn't mean that it's easy. So there has to be an element of truth to people to go, this will be challenging.
Yes.
But it will be worth it, but it's going to be a tough thing to do. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah. And I get that a lot. Because I ask, why did you reach out to me? Why did you choose me? And, the same thing will come up over, like, different things come up, but a common thing that comes up is saying, I know you're not going to let me away with it, Kate. They get, and I say, yeah, well, and I kind of nearly, I come with a warning, and if that's not going to suit you, we're not the right pair. Because I cannot take your money and have a conversation with you. This is not tea and coffee. This is not what this is. And if it feels like tea and coffee, we need to stop it, and stop it quite quickly. That's not what this is. You can go and have a coffee with somebody for free and not pay them. You're paying me. This is a transaction, and it is important that you get something out of this,
100%.
And that might be, at its very simplest form, being happy with who I am and being able to walk into the room as I am. It might be, willing to put my piece across the paper to say I want to be president. You decide. But whatever it is, we are working towards that. We're working towards that. And we can change what the goal is at any time because it's yours, but we're working towards something. There has to be an outcome at the end of every session. Otherwise, it's you and I toasting each other, and that's not coaching.
Yeah, 100%. And what was it then? Because I probably missed a gap in a sense of, we were talking about your identity before and where you are now. What was it where did coaching come up for you? Where did you first come across or decide, actually, that's what I want to do?
Well, I was always in leadership. I was always in managerial, so very KPI driven. So I suppose, again, it's all the aspects of your life make you who you are, and we can either run away from them, or we can start putting them together and going, how do I make the best of all of this? So I was highly KPI driven, highly competitive. Let's drive the sales numbers, blah blah blah.
Okay.
That makes me a great coach because I'm goal driven, target driven, take you across the line. But if I was just that as a coach, then I'm an aggressive, assertive, pushy coach. And that doesn't work in coaching, because coaching is the absolute bipolar opposite of it.
Yeah.
But alongside that, I had the ability to read the room, sense what was going on, which heightens your emotional intelligence, your EQ, to know what is happening, and the empathy. So I always was a leader with, let's drive the sales. And I was always leading, always talking, always coaching, always counseling, my entire career. So I've probably 25 years of coaching, but not in a physical coaching sense.
Yep.
And did lots of one-to-ones and lots of group meetings, and realized, actually, I'm actually coaching here. I'm mentoring probably more than coaching. And then decided I need to formalize this, and went to college and realized a lot of what I was doing was mentoring, not coaching. And thought, that's okay, you can mentor or coach, that's fine. But fell in love with coaching, fell in love with not being the expert. And for a long period of my life, I got a kick out of being the expert in the room. I got a kick out of being the person with the answers in the room. I got a kick out of being the fixer. So it took a bit of adjustment for me to not fix, not be the expert. And I fought against that. Like, I remember at the very first class I went to in coaching, the tutor, who I am now best buddies with, Alan, said, in a coaching relationship, who's the expert? I thought, obviously the coach. Obviously. And it was wrong. And I had to take my hand down, maybe slowly going, can anybody see? And I went, I need to think of that. I don't know if I want to do this, because I found it difficult letting go of the kick I would have got from being the expert in the room. And I really had to work on that.
Wow.
Yeah, James, had to do a lot of work on that. And then I got to the stage going, how could I be smarter than James when we're talking about James? Like, how is that even possible, Kate? Come on.
Yeah.
How are you smarter than James? How do you know more about James than James does? Obviously, James is the expert in his life. And when that penny dropped, I was able to let go of the expert like a hot iron, James. That it nearly empowered me. It took a weight off my shoulder. I don't need to know the answer anymore. Whoa,
Yes. Yeah.
James got it. Now I need to figure out, how do we get James to say it?
Yes.
How do we get James to know it? How do we get James to realize that he's got it? I don't know what it is. James does. So my job is to help James with the process of extracting that absolute magic that James has inside that he doesn't know about, or is too frightened to take out.
Yeah.
And then that was a whole new world, beautiful new world,
Yeah. Love it.
And that's relatively, that's about 5 years ago, so that's not a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that. But I also love as well that because I talk to a lot of coaches on the show, and it's just in general, but it's also that to try and break that perception from other people as well, that we don't have to work on ourselves as well, that everyone has to do. So it's like you say yourself, that sort of, well, the personal development thing for yourself was, I have to let go of this part of who I was, or that previous iteration that when it served me then to be the expert in those previous roles, it's not going to serve me now. So there's a constant development on every one of us. I think it was when I did my coaching qualification, it was just like the person that was saying is like, you only have to be a few steps ahead of someone, but there's someone else who's a few steps ahead of you that can help you. So everyone is trying to help each other along that sort of, whatever that path, if you want to call it, in a sense. But there's still elements for yourself that you can always work on. And it comes back to, I suppose, in that piece you said about in the teams or working with groups, whatever it is, that showing that vulnerable side and thinking, because I'm sure maybe just putting words in your head, but when you're thinking, I have to be the expert, that's actually when you're going into this position is like, well, I can't show a weakness as well. That can, and that can hold you back as well.
Well, that's where the magic is. The magic is in the not knowing. The magic is in the, as you say, break it down a wee bit more, break it down a bit more. Now we all understand. But if somebody's not brave enough to say that, nobody's understanding, and we're all nodding, pretending we do, and we do not learn, And I think that's where training is falling down a lot. I think we don't have that coaching space in a training room. We have an expert saying, this is how you do it. And I'm sure you've done this before. Oh, yes, yes. And you get what I mean? Yes, yes. And everyone's going, no, not really. And we leave not trained.
Yeah.
ticked the box and we've got the certificates and we've tied it all up in a gorgeous bow, and we now all know how to have difficult conversations.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
because we didn't
yeah.
have the difficult conversation in the room, like,
Yeah.
I'm not getting it, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. No, it's no, it's one of those that definitely needs to even from our experience, it's sort of to change that sort of perspective and change that sort of because I'm sure you've done it over the years, the whole things of like Myers-Briggs and personality types and things like that. And you know, they can have an element of sense of my experience, they can help and things like that to maybe understand each other. But there's a little bit, I suppose, I don't know, of maybe this is going back into the fortune telling piece as well, as like when you tell people what they want to hear, oh yeah, that's me. You know, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy and sometimes of those things. It's actually, but okay, so we know maybe a little bit, but as you say, is it really moving us along? Is it really challenging the way we're thinking to think it differently? Maybe not. So coming at it and almost like with a, do you, when you go into your training things now, is it almost blank canvas? Is, you know, I'd love to know a sense of the approach in a sense of how you do
So
it.
I do no training anymore. So I've stopped. I was training it whenever I
Yeah.
come out originally as
Yeah.
a coach. You know yourself, you come out as a
Yeah.
coach and go, I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, I'm a
Yeah.
mentor, I'm a speaker. You
Yeah.
know, list
Yeah.
all the
Yeah. The
things.
lot.
To track out a business for yourself, you know, you have to take in an income. So very, very quickly I dropped the training. I went, I don't want to tell, how can I tell people what to do and yet say I'm coaching? It
Yeah.
didn't feel aligned to me. So I dropped that very, very quickly. And now I purely coach and mentor. And I'm very, very strict about whether I'm mentoring or coaching. Do you know,
Yeah.
so very, very clear. But I do not roll out any whiteboards, any presentations, anything. There's nothing comes into the room with me. I go in with a pen and a book, and that is it. Sometimes the pen and the book aren't even used. With
Yes.
regards to preparation prior to, I will have a think about what we did. I will go through my notes from the previous session, but I will have no preparation done for the session because it is critical that we let the session go where it
Yes.
needs to go. So let's say I coached you last week, and then this week I'm thinking about you and I'm going, actually, do you know what? I'm going to use this model with James. I think James would be great with the GROW model for talk's sake.
Yeah.
The audience might know what the GROW model is. I'm going to force that GROW model in now at some stage in our session because I've decided that's what we're going to do today, whether we need to do it or not. And that's going to stop me being present. And that's going to
Yeah.
stop me picking up on what's happening and where we need to take this session, where this session needs to organically go itself. So yes,
Yeah.
I've been in college. I've learned all the tools. I've learned all the methods. I cannot tell you the last time I brought a tool or into the room. I just don't do it. I have them in my back pocket. I know how to use them. If we get stuck, I can roll it out if need be. But my coaching business is not about that. With regards to personality tests, etc., no, not a
Mm.
chance. If you want to do them, but they're not within my business model.
Mm.
And I've lots of opinions on that. And I've kind
Yeah.
of hot water with regards to my opinions on that. But I am 100% an organic coach, and
Yeah.
I show organically in
Yeah.
the room. And I am happy and very comfortable. And I had a fantastic tutor, Alan, and I have to call his name out because this guy
Yeah.
is just fantastic. But he taught me to dance in the space that I'm in
Yep. Yeah.
with whatever music is getting played. It's kind of going, well, I really don't like, the waltz, but I'll give it a go because that's the music that's been played.
Yeah.
And I now have to figure out how do I dance in that space. So
Yeah.
I very much tap into that.
Yeah.
But that's also akin to my background. Do you know,
Yes.
so as much as I fought against the fortune teller's
Yeah.
daughter, I'm actually sitting before you today as the fortune teller's daughter too.
Yeah.
Because that taught me to sit in that space.
Yeah. But I think as well though, and I'm sure we won't go into it. We share probably the similar opinions in relation to those sort of personality type test things or whatever and that. But it's an element again, and it's going to take time in a sense of in a space of companies and that to sort of move away from those because it's quite predictable. It's quite it's comfortable, exactly, and it's there versus the sort of like, because you say you were there yourself when you're in that space of it's all KPIs, it's all spreadsheets and datas and stuff, and everyone likes to see that because that's comfortable. It's what we know. So when someone comes in and they haven't got even anything with them, I
Yeah,
thought we'd just
yeah.
be looking at a whiteboard, and it but that's what shifts. That's what people, and I have to share this as well because it's an interesting perspective as well, because one of my things, like from when I do this show and do this podcast and I chat to people, it's funny, but people will do huge amount of prep. I do the minimum. I don't do a huge amount of research. I did it the first few. I was like, when I was chatting, whatever it was, years ago, a year and a half ago, whatever, I was doing episode 1 and 2 or whatever, I was, I better find this, because I was like, my worry is I'll run out of things to say or we'll run out of conversation. Whereas like, I don't want to predict or dictate or anticipate the conversation. I don't want to be, because like, I had no idea about the fortune teller's daughter. I didn't want to sit here going, oh, she hopes she mentions that, because again, because then you'd be like going, oh, I'd be ahead of my head, but she hasn't mentioned it. Or she hasn't. Why hasn't she mentioned that? So again, it's the same way if you're going into those coaching spaces thinking, oh, I bet they say this, or I bet they say that. You're thinking about the thing that they're not saying versus, as you say, being present within that moment and seeing what happens. A goal in mind, for sure. We still want to get to where we want to get to. Let's have that as the whatever umbrella title, whatever it is. But the how we get there, that's the interesting part.
And it's really interesting. You can be sitting 55 minutes of a 1 hour session and you're going, right, maybe this was a bit too organic. And then in the last 3 minutes, bang. And everything that happened before got us to that space, and we will get to an outcome, but at a pace and at a space that allows the client to get there. And I'm just kind of there doing a wee shove and a wee nudge and a wee, and taking them along the journey, because that's much more powerful, much more powerful.
100%.
And if you want a preordained, laid out session 1, then that's okay. But that wouldn't be me, and we wouldn't work together. But again, that goes back to that very first thing as well we discussed at the start, the freedom and the identity. To walk into a large organization, and I do, to the large corporates, with my pen and notebook, and I don't walk in thinking they think I've only got a pen, and I walk in proud with my wee notebook under my arm and my pen, and you can see them sometimes going, Jesus, is that all she's got? What's she doing? She's gone into the room now with 20 of our, and she's got a pen. There's no laptop. There's no laptop. Where is she? Kate, we've set up the conference room, and you've got access to. Oh, I won't need access. Oh, okay. And you can see sometimes the faces drop, going, "What is she doing there? What is happening in there?" So it is, and I'm very kind of playful and provocative with clients to say, "Well, what are you going to do?" I'm going to go, "Well, I'm not coaching you. I'm coaching your team. You don't need to know. You'll know I'm here, and you'll know I've spent the time. We'll talk that. But what happens in there is actually not your business. And if you're not comfortable with that, then I can't go in. Because we're locking that room down. That's a confidential conversation. You will not be told about that unless they decide to discuss it. But I will tell you, I turned up at 10 and I left at 11. Everyone was present. I think it's good. But that's all you're getting. And if you're not happy with that, and corporates do find that difficult.
Yes. Because again, it's the element of trying to control, and it's the element of wanting to control. And this is one of the, I'd say, from my own, again, coming, because it is why I love talking to coaches, because you go, Jesus, I remember that now about myself. The element of trying to let go of the outcome. To sort of like, granted, we may have a goal, granted, we may have something that we're aiming towards, but we have no control, whether that be achievable, get it. We have no idea. And then, because when you're in that area of, again, like, it's the KPIs, it's the data, is this, it's there on a number, you can see the spreadsheet, and we're so fixated on it. So we want it, but that's completely outside of our control. It's only whether we do the steps beforehand, whether we'll reach that target or not. So the ability, it is one of the biggest things, and it's still, I continue to have to work on it myself, is to let go of the outcome. Absolutely, when I do that, then I'm kind of there. To me, is freedom for myself, because it's kind of like, even when I say it now, it's just that sort of, that's where my shoulders drop when going, oh Jesus, I don't have to worry about it. I just have to focus on the now. That's a really powerful thing.
And if we are going in as a coach fixated on the outcome, we've put ourselves back in the expert place again. We've put ourselves back in the space where you have to figure it out. You don't have to figure it out. You're there for the process. The client is there with the content. They have the content. You can't control, you don't know what I was going to say today.
Yeah,
Therefore, you're going to have to be willing and able to deal with what I say today.
100%.
Same in a coaching room. You know, I don't know what the client's going to say. And if I need to know the way and have it mapped and they throw something in, then I'm not going to be able to deal with it. And they're not going to get from me what they need to get from me. So it's really important to practice letting go of the outcome, because the more we practice it, the better we are in the dance, so to speak.
Yeah,
You know?
100%.
And we get better at that.
Yeah. One of the things I like to ask people as well, when the sort of maybe the transition from going in maybe from a worker, an employee, to sort of being self-employed, that whole, now you're helping people with who maybe like other coaches and sort of businesses. How did you find, or some of the lessons you learned from that transition from employee to sort of self-employed business owner
Oh,
yourself?
I was so ready, James. I would never have been easy to manage, you know. So let's call a spade a spade, you know. And so I was never like, you clip my wings, I'm going to go somewhere and figure out how to grow them even,
Yeah.
you know. So I was always going to go out by myself, but
Perfect.
I'm also very strategic,
Yep.
very, very pragmatic, and you know, have a good business, you know, sense. So I knew just popping out as a coach, that's not going to work. I am going to have to spend months trying to get clients. So where am I going to get my, you know, my funnel, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I suppose in the last few years of my role, I was retail director. I started getting onto LinkedIn on a heavy, heavy, heavy way. You know,
Yeah.
now I was still at that stage, we take on things. I was Kate Best because it was best menswear. So I became Kate Best, and Best was Kate works in Best. Kate's the director of Best.
Yeah.
So that became my brand. But that brand was strong enough, you know, and recognized enough that whenever I said I am now gone and
Yeah.
I am out, I'd already built up, like, I think within 2 days I had my first client who
Wow.
contacted me, and you know, without me having to go out, all I
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
to say was I am now out and I am
Yeah.
ready to take on clients. But I was doing the work probably consciously the last year for definite, unconsciously probably for 2 or 3, because I
Yeah.
always knew I would come out and I always knew I would do something. I thought it would be consultancy at that stage,
Yeah.
and you know, that took a turn. So I would say my journey and my step was very different to other people's,
Yeah.
because it was pretty conscious. And I
Yes.
knew 10 years ago I'd be doing this
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
averting this. So when I stepped out, I found it probably easier than most. Plus, I understood brand. I understood you need to be out there, you need to get recognized, you need to be a bit,
Yeah.
you need to be memorable. I got all that at a very core level. I didn't learn that like a lot of people do when they step into business. They learn that as they're
Yeah.
developing their business. I already knew that. So I stepped out with my brand, with my name, and thought, you now have to get that. Like, I remember somebody contacted me saying, Kate, you're like bloody Coca-Cola at this stage, you know, everywhere you're there. You know? So that wasn't by accident. That was
Yes.
very, very conscious, you know.
Yes.
Like, at the minute I'm ramping up the team coaching piece. Every time you see me show up, 95% of that would be me
Yeah.
talking about team coaching. And that is
Yeah.
very conscious, you know. So
Yes.
I would say my step out was different to most because it was
Yeah.
this thought out, structured step out with a very clear plan and goal on what
Yeah.
I need to do and how to get there. And I was
Perfect.
also very, very clear on who I was.
Yeah.
I was not stepping
Yeah.
out going, my name's Kate, and I am a career coach and a life coach and
Yeah.
a, you know, a spiritual coach or whatever. Do you know, I was out saying day one, and yes, that's transformed and changed, but day one, I will add value. If you want to see change, come to me. If you want a cup of tea, go to somebody else. So my message was,
Yeah.
she's a wee bit much. She's maybe not for me. And I was kind of going, that's okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I did in the first year was I turned clients down when people were not, and I said no, because I had to stay true to who I was and what I was. That meant I turned down a huge, huge client, like in the first year where you are needing clients, James,
Yeah.
massive clients. And I said no. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I had initially said I would
Yeah.
take them on, didn't feel right, went to bed. I woke up at 4 in the morning with a feeling in my stomach that this was not aligned. These people
Yes.
are aligned with me. This is going to take me in a direction that I can't go. And I sent an email immediately, and then I phoned at 9 o'clock in the morning and declined the chance of us working together. Now, yes, my partner went, "Are you crazy?" And I said, maybe, but this isn't right. And this is not where I need to go. So I can't do this as much as I possibly need it financially. I can't do it.
Yeah.
No, and I've continued to say no. I say no. Yeah, I've got a wee thing here, like
Yeah.
95% of the time, and I say yes to what matters, yes to what's going to be important for me. Like these are not unconscious cues. I have it sitting in front of me, and I'll go yes or no. Where do you sit with this? Is this aligned?
Interesting.
So I'm very, very, very conscious about what I do. That is conscious, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, I suppose it's like that's the sort of the biggest, probably one of the biggest fears for anyone starting a business is obviously getting people to work with you, and people essentially to part their money. And so it's a very, as you say, a brave thing, but true thing to go with the people, as you say, the reasons why, and that sort of the idea, when thinking of the whole, we have the ideal client from a marketing perspective, a business perspective, we say, but from an actual, as you call it, alignment perspective, this is the reasons why I'm actually doing this. And the reason is like, not for this group of people, that's not me. So it's very, I'd say, even though at the time, maybe the sort of financial, sort of implications, when you had, after you made that decision, you sent the email and you made the phone call, can you remember what it was, how you felt after that?
I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew instantly it was the right thing to do. I felt the pain of that. This was an industry that I really wanted to get into, and this would have been a fantastic client from a portfolio perspective.
Yeah.
My alignment with them, I just thought they are going to suck the lifeblood out of me. I'm going to sell my soul here, and I can't do that. So I knew it was right, but I still struggled with it from a business perspective. But instantly I went,
that moment of pure relief that you actually did it. But even just the words you said there, like, they're going to suck the soul out of me. Like, because that's when I think, when, again, from a coaching perspective, it's like when you have to almost get down into people, and when they say something, or they think, because they may be thinking it, but they're not afraid, they're too afraid to say it. It's like, there you go. That's the reason, either yes or a no, because listen to what you just said. If I do this, it's like I'm selling my soul.
Yeah.
You can't have a bigger no than that. Like, it's
that's not the
absolutely
road.
Yeah. This is a bit of point in the chat where I always like to ask people. You already shared one with us, and you shared it from what sat behind you, the quote or phrase that's there. Any other ones that come to mind?
Oh, well, I've got lots, but loads. I love quotes. But the one, I suppose, when I stepped out into this world and I started to get clear on, you need to be clear who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, your values. You need to be really, really clear in this, Kate. And again, pragmatic, and organized as a personality. I thought, what's going to get me back on track when I start to waver? Because I will absolutely waver. I'm human, and I might get pulled or dragged. Is this supporting what I'm trying to create? Does this support what I am trying to create? And I say that to myself almost daily. Silly to say. I would just say, Kate, is this supporting where you're trying to go? Is this supporting what you're trying to create?
Yeah.
And it's a very straight question that requires a very honest answer. And if the answer is no, I figure out a way out.
Yeah.
I try to get it dropped. I try to stop. So that's my guidance. That is without a doubt, that is what has guided me day one. Is this supporting what I'm trying to create? But you need to know what you're trying to create.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm very clear on what I'm trying to create.
I love that.
Which is freedom.
But this is why I love to ask that question as well, though, because in a sense of quotes and phrases, the whole thing of you can throw them around, but that one is a really sort of anchoring phrase for yourself. And those are the ones that I really think, because the application that they can have. So it's when you have those moments, as you say. So one of mine, I very much have been out there and stole from Jerry Hussey. And then, if Jerry, the books that he's read, and his was when he worked with sports people. His was win. What's important now?
Yeah, what's important now? Yeah.
Now, and that's so when I find myself that it's just like you feels like your head is up here, and it's just like because it brings you right back into that moment. It's like maybe the most important thing now is to go have a cup of tea or go outside, or maybe it's just to sit still, or maybe it's to read or whatever. Or maybe it's the thing that you really don't want to do is the most important thing now. Maybe it's the phone call you didn't want to make, the email you didn't want to send, whatever. So I love those sorts of phrases, like the one you said there. What this supporting what I'm trying to create? Because it makes it, unlike a coaching question, very binary.
Yes. Yes.
As coaches, as a coach, it's like, no, ask the open question and stuff. But sometimes you need to bring it back to,
that gives
you need to make a call.
Takes me right back to sort yourself out, Kate. Get back on track now.
Yes.
If you either answer yes or no, there is no debate here. The answer is yes or no. Answer it faithfully and to take the action that needs to be taken.
Yes.
So it's a joke.
Because I mean, this is a tangent off from that question now, because I like to, because when I'm with another coach, the whole sort of breaking the rules of being a coach, because the whole thing of we want to ask more open questions. But sometimes I think, asking the more direct question has a place sometimes with someone as well. Is that somewhere, do you venture, or do you keep to the real sort of open side?
I'm always a rule breaker. I never liked rules. In everything I do. Sometimes if a client is wavering, or, and we know that they've gone around it. So it's not that they haven't visited, they've visited it, but they're now frightened to make a decision. I will ask a very direct question, and try to get them into, and let's move on, because we've gone round this a few times now. And as a coach, if I allow you to go back round a third or fourth time, I'm not helping. I'm not at that stage challenging you. You now need to challenge. And sometimes a challenge can be, what is it?
Yeah.
What do we do? What's the action right now?
Yeah.
And then you see them kind of, take themselves out of the wee world, because we can't accommodate that type of behavior constantly as a coach. We can indulge in it and let them go around, but at some stage we have to pull back in. Come back to me now, James. We need to come back now. I have 5 minutes left. Come back. Where are we going? What are we doing? Okay. And off we go.
Love it. Because I just love that sort of, I love you say I'm a rule breaker in it, but I think there's space for that as well, because it's getting to where you're trying to serve the best for the client as well. The next question I had there is, like, who would you say have been the biggest influences in your life?
I've been asked this question a lot. I always go back to my granny. My granny her name was Elizabeth Law, which I always thought was a brilliant name. Law was always interesting. And she was a devout Catholic, which I am not. But I admired her spiritualism. I admired her belief. She went to mass 7 days a week. Gave all the money to the nuns and the priests, which that's a whole other podcast. But that, regardless of her belief, whether I believe it or not, she was so devout to it. She believed it so much, and it gave her such happiness and such contentment, sitting in her bed at night, with all her wee prayers and her rosary beads. That gave her contentment. That gave her, I think, a place and a space in life. And I admire that, as opposed to the physical, religion piece. I admire her belief. And I admire people who have a belief. I don't have to have the same belief. I don't have to even agree with it. But if you've got a belief that you are really, really into, that really makes you happy, and that doesn't do bad in the world, that doesn't cause, harm, I find that hugely respectful and admiring, So somebody with a belief and a sense, something that I don't have to understand, but I get that it does something for you. So my granny, Elizabeth Law, has always, and again, if you could speak to anybody, because she died when I was about maybe 18, you're not interested in your granny at that stage. You don't realize the wisdom that they have. But I look back and I go, oh my God, I would love to sit with her for an hour and pick her wisdom and ask her questions about what she thinks. So not having done that is a regret. You were young and you had your own life and you were going to different things. But looking back, a couple of hours with that lady would be pretty
amazing.
transformative. Yeah.
Yeah, I would share that that love of people who have that sort of, you say, whether it be belief or complete sort of devoutness or passion for something, whatever it is, like, they're just it in a sense of, like, again, their embodiment of themselves, like they're a pure, in a sense of that I go back to that, I suppose, that whole identity piece again that you spoke about earlier, but not doing it for the sake of it. It's not for anyone else. It's
No.
purely
Yeah.
because they are completely and utterly in it. Now, I find that a really fascinating, interesting, endearing quality with people, because you know exactly what you're going to get. And as you say, whether you don't have to agree or disagree, but it just, I share that as well. It's I can get, but I can, and I can, and why I love, I said it a few times, ask that question at the end, because I can see that through you from the conversation we've had. And it's, people forget the influence we've had on how people have influenced, and we go, actually, that is why I'm not a devout Catholic, but I'm devout to who I am.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what we mean by influence, in a sense of those things we take. No, I love it. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you, Kate, and I've really enjoyed it. I do have one more question for you before I let you go, and that is, what's important for your future?
What's important for my future? I think right now, in the space I'm in at this moment, it is a lot of what we've talked about. I am on a mission to hear what people have to say. I'm absolutely on a quest to get into rooms and say, let's hear what's already here without putting more stuff in. And I think if we're able to do that, especially within leadership, especially within management, because I see a lot of problems in that area, I think we can create a lot of magic and move a lot of, I think, frustration. I think a lot of people in leadership roles at the moment and in corporate environments at the moment are not happy. And they're spending 40 plus hours a week not happy. And the happiness already sits there. It's already there, but nobody's trying to figure out how to bring it out. And new jobs might work, and new training might work, and courses might work. But I think we're missing something quite fundamental, which is, let's tap into what's already there and let's see what comes up. So at the minute, that's where I am. That's where I am totally focused on. Yeah. And
Love
on
it.
to try to, pull out what's already there and stop implanting information. Let's just stop for a while. We go back at a later date, but let's stop and see what we've got before
Love
we put
it.
in any.
I love that, and I wish you the best of luck with that. But again, thank you so much for chatting to me. I want to make sure before I let you go that people know how to connect with you, follow you. So we'll make sure any links you have are all in the show notes. But if you want to give a shout out now of where people can connect and follow you online.
Yeah, so mostly I'm active on LinkedIn. That's where most of my activity is, and that's where you'll hear what I'm doing. You'll see reviews, etc. My website, I have a second website just being launched any day now. It was meant to be launched last week, but we know how websites go. And that is the OnLegs Agency. I'm on Instagram as the OnLegs Agency. I'm on TikTok as the OnLegs Agency. So I'm pretty much everywhere.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I'm not shy about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Well, as I say, all of those links to all of those platforms will be in the show notes. So make sure you click on and follow and connect with Kate. And once again, Kate, thank you so much for chatting to me today.
Thank you so much, James. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. I really hope you enjoyed the conversation. To support the show, please subscribe on your favorite platform, share your favorite episode, get involved with your comments, and give the show a rating. If you want to learn more about what I do, you can follow me at James Dean Coaching on Facebook and Instagram, connect with me on LinkedIn, or check out my website, jamesdeancoaching.com.